Sana bir şey söyleyeyim. Ne olur. Hayır, son konuşma yok. Konuşma yok. Hayır, konuşma yok.
Tunca hadi çıkın abi. Tamam. Çıkın. Tamam. Kapatıyorum ben. Çıkın arkadaşlar. Tamam. Arkadaşlar. Serhat abi. Tamam.
Buraya kadar
Bu arada patlama yaşandı burada. Evet, patlama yaşandı kameralarda. Şu anda patlama yaşandı. Yerde parçalanmış insan cesedi var.
Gel böyle gel.
But first, the latest on a big story breaking overnight. Chaos for a key U.S. ally in the Middle East. Turkey, which hosts the U.S.-led coalition fighting ISIS, suffered a violent attempted coup last night. Cameras inside Parliament caught the moment when an explosion rocked the capital of Ankara. This morning, it appears the coup has failed. At least 161 people, including police and civilians, are dead, and more than 2,800 military members are under arrest. Turkey's president says he is in control of the country.
Turkey is important for U.S. interests as it is the nexus between the Middle East and Europe. But relations between the two nations have deteriorated in recent years as the U.S. complained that Turkey was not doing enough to fight the Islamic State. President Obama is urging all parties in Turkey to support the democratically elected government of President Recep Erdogan. Holly Williams is in Taksim Square in central Istanbul, where there were violent clashes last night.
Good morning. We've just witnessed a night of violence and confusion here in Turkey. And though this attempted coup may have been defeated, what we saw makes one of America's most important allies here in the Middle East look increasingly unstable. The tanks that rolled onto the streets late last night were the first sign that an attempted coup was underway. For hours, gunfire and explosions rang out in neighbourhoods across Turkey's biggest city. Here and in the capital, Ankara, fighter jets repeatedly flew low overhead. This internet video appears to show a helicopter opening fire on protesters. And Turkey's parliament was apparently hit by a bomb. The attempted power grab was announced on Turkish state TV, which was taken over by some of the coup plotters. A so-called peace council was now in charge of the country, said the newsreader, to defend Turkey's democracy. But not long after that, Turkey's democratically elected president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, called into another television station, vowing to defeat the attempted coup and urging people to take to the street. Crowds of his supporters did just that, confronting the tanks and troops and shouting their defiance. By the early hours of this morning, the soldiers who attempted to seize power were surrendering and handing over their weapons. Government supporters had retaken control of state TV and crowded into its studio. The newsreader said she'd earlier been held hostage by the coup plotters. And then President Erdogan arrived back in Istanbul, welcomed by hundreds of his supporters. The attempted coup was treason, he told them this morning, promising to make the perpetrators pay a heavy price for pointing the people's guns against the people. There were still plumes of smoke hanging over Ankara this morning. The government may be back in charge, but this is a nation shaken by a night of chaos. There are reports this morning that a Turkish military helicopter has landed in northern Greece with at least 7 Turkish military personnel on board, presumably all involved in this failed coup, and they have now asked for political asylum. Vanita.
Holly Williams in Istanbul this morning. Thank you.
The revolution will not be tweeted. That's how it was looking in the first hour of the attempted coup in Turkey Friday night. Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube all slowing to a crawl. Twitter's global public policy team tweeting, "We have no reason to think we've been fully blocked in Turkey, but we suspect there is an intentional slowing of our traffic in country." Throttling the internet instead of outright blocking it has become the government's preferred method of manipulating social media, according to experts. But just 1 hour after connectivity was at a virtual standstill, social media came roaring back to life in Turkey. The country's president turned to Apple's FaceTime to communicate with the country. Apparently unable to access TV studios, sister network CNN Turk had to interview Erdogan holding up an iPhone, using the video chat feature just after midnight local time. It wasn't clear where the president was speaking from. With the connection back, Turkish citizens and journalists turned to live streaming via Twitter's Periscope and Facebook Live to show the world in real time dramatic video of the military uprising. Even capturing low-flying jets zooming over the capital city of Ankara. Turkey's the second most active country on Periscope in the world. Turks moved quickly to get their photos and messages out on social media, not knowing when the next digital blackout might come. The Turkish government has one of the most fraught relationships with social media worldwide. YouTube was blocked more than 2 years there, beginning in 2008. Social media was slowed down in the hours after the recent Istanbul airport attacks, as well as multiple times just before the country's held elections. Now Erdogan is taking to social media himself, tweeting out, "We have put our heads at risk for the sake of this noble cause. This attempted coup will be repelled with God's permission." One of the top trending hashtags in the country Saturday translates to, "I want the death penalty." The hashtag spreading after Turkey's prime minister mentioning that there's no death penalty in the Turkish legal system, but making clear parliament will now discuss what measures should be taken to prevent another coup in the night.
David Begnaud is on the phone with us. He has been talking to high-level law enforcement sources all day. David, what do you know now?
Jamie, when I just got off the phone with you to take a call from Baton Rouge Police Headquarters, it was to find out the following information. According to law enforcement at the scene, 3 law enforcement officers are deceased. There are 3 more that have been shot. That gives us a total of 6. Now, here's why I'm using the term law enforcement officers. It's our understanding that some of the it's our understanding that some of the victims are Baton Rouge police officers, and some of them are East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's deputies. The clarification as to who belongs to whom is not being reported right now. All we know is 6 wounded. 3 are dead. 3 are at the hospital. We can confirm that 1 individual believed to be a suspect is deceased. and that there is a search ongoing right now for possibly 2 other suspects. When I questioned them as to how they know about the other suspects, they said, we're just getting that from information at the scene, so we're pursuing 2 others. So again, 6 law enforcement officers in the Baton Rouge, Louisiana area have been shot. 3 are dead. 1 of the suspects is deceased, and there may be 2 other suspects.
Well, and, you know, with those 2 other suspects, as we saw in Dallas, David, these types of situations, they want to go out of their way and make sure that when they're talking to witnesses, they gather all the information that they possibly can. In Dallas, I remember very clearly that morning we had been told that there were 4 suspects. And, of course, as the day went on, it became very clear that this was carried out by just 1 individual. So searching for 2 suspects now, 1 potential suspect dead, as you've been reporting, 6 officers shot, 3 of them dead. Do you find it of interest, David, when we were talking earlier about that plot that was unfoiled, the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office was very involved in foiling that plot and had provided extra resources to the Baton Rouge Police Department. Now both of these agencies are involved in this situation.
Well, yeah, and listen, I have to tell you from being on the scene, you know, ever since, 24 hours after Alton Sterling died, this was a law enforcement effort, Jamie, that not only involved Baton Rouge Police, East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff, but it involved law enforcement agencies from around the state of Louisiana, and that's because the Baton Rouge police officers were exhausted. Some of them had been working shifts in excess of 18 hours.
That's a good point.
I remember asking one law enforcement officer, I've seen you here every day, almost all the time. What shouldn't you take a break? And he goes, I can't leave my guys out here. I even met the officer who had some of his teeth knocked out from a bottle that was thrown at him, and he said, I'm here tonight because I can't let my brothers do it alone. They were pulling law enforcement from as far away as Shreveport, which is in the northwestern corner of Louisiana, 4 hours from Baton Rouge, because that's how badly understaffed and exhausted they were. So when I got this call just now about how many were wounded, he said, please make it clear that we're not saying which came from what agency, because we had the Baton Rouge Police and the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office involved in this shooting. And what we don't know, Jamie, is, remember, the call initially came in as an officer-involved shooting.
Right.
That indicates to me that officers engaged the gunman. Shots were fired by law enforcement, right? But what we don't know is why those officers initially opened fire. Was it an ambush? The first call I got from a senior law enforcement official in Louisiana said a man was walking down Airline Highway and opened fire. Okay? So if the officers returned fire, that could have been why it was initially reported as an officer-involved shooting.
Right. Well, and I think, it's important to note, we have been talking about that this is about, a mile, 2 miles from the police headquarters. It does come as, of course, there's tension across not only Baton Rouge, but the country between the black community and police. But at this point in time, we don't know the motivation behind this shooting. We also don't know the races of the suspect, or, as you've been reporting, potential suspects, and the officers are not immediately known at this point either. So there's still a lot of information that needs to be gathered.
Absolutely, yeah. And we can tell you that the Louisiana State Police is heading up the investigation, which is customary anytime law enforcement agencies, local law enforcement agencies in Baton Rouge use their service weapons. The state police is always called in to handle the investigation, and that is what is happening right now. But again, 1 suspect is said to be dead at the scene, we're told, and there is a search ongoing for potentially 2 other suspects. But I want to caution you, so often, and Jamie, you've made this clear before, so often people say, well, you guys initially reported they're looking for 2, and it turned out there was only 1. We're just telling you what we're being told. And you can understand, as a law enforcement agency, on the scene, when they get information there may be 2 others, you have to treat it as if it's real. Right? And
Absolutely.
So that's why the information is subject to change. And I would just caution everyone that it could change. And if the numbers do, it's not because of bad reporting. It's because the law enforcement agencies are adjusting their numbers and their facts as they become more clear.
Yeah, the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office just sending out an alert as well to what you have been reporting, David, that 3 law enforcement officers are confirmed dead, 3 others injured, 1 suspect dead, and that they do believe that 2 others may be at large. And that could be why we have been watching some of these live pictures from our affiliate WAFB. You can see right now the SWAT unit is arriving on scene right now. We had been told earlier that they believed that the situation was under control, but as David just pointed out, they are searching for potentially 2 other suspects in this case. It may be why we're now starting to see more activity in this live picture from the shooting scene. In Louisiana at this point in time. You can see also EMS, firefighters, and a number of other agencies arriving on scene as well because they are still potentially searching for 2 other suspects in this shooting. One suspect does appear to have died in this situation.
Gavin Long carried out the shooting in Baton Rouge on his 29th birthday. Officers said he was wearing all black and carrying a rifle. Law enforcement sources tell CBS News his online presence shows a writer with a passion for motivating people, and a recent video urged viewers to fight back against oppressors. Dean Reynolds is in Kansas City, Missouri, near a recent address linked to the gunman. Dean, good morning.
Good morning. Well, Gavin Long was an ex-Marine sergeant whose tours of duty included Iraq and Japan. But last year he aligned himself with a fringe group which federal authorities have called a growing domestic threat.
Peace, love, and positivity. What's up, everybody?
Gavin Long posted his thoughts in a series of YouTube videos.
I thought my own thoughts. I made my own decisions. I'm the one who got to listen to the judgment.
The 29-year-old described himself as a life coach, nutritionist, and personal trainer. He wrote 3 books. In a video posted 9 days before the shooting, Long said he was affiliated with the Spirit of Justice.
Don't affiliate me with nothing. Yeah, I was also a Nation of Islam member. I'm not affiliated with it. They'll try to put you with ISIS or some other terrorist group or anything. No.
Last May, Long filed paperwork in Jackson County, Missouri to change his name to Cosmo. He declared himself a sovereign citizen, part of a group that believes government and law enforcement does not hold any authority. In an FBI law enforcement bulletin in 2011, the agency called sovereign citizens a growing domestic threat to law enforcement and said the FBI considers sovereign citizen extremists as comprising a domestic terrorist movement. This video, which Long said he was recording from Dallas after the police killings there, condemns any peaceful protest.
It's only fighting back or money. That's all they care about. Revenue and blood.
His last tweet, posted 7 hours before the Baton Rouge shooting, proclaims, "Just because you shed your physical body doesn't mean that you're dead." Now, court records show that Long was married in 2009, but divorced 2 years later. He had no children and no known criminal record.
Today, the head of one of Cleveland's largest police unions called on Governor Kasich to temporarily restrict the state's open carry gun laws during this week's Republican National Convention. The shootings of 6 police officers in Baton Rouge this morning prompted the request. The terror attack in Nice, France last week had already ratcheted up concerns about security here in Cleveland, where an estimated 50,000 people are expected to attend the convention. Warren Savage tonight joins me here. So let's talk about how the recent events impacted security, how it's handled here at the convention, Martin.
Yeah, it's been staggering. I mean, almost every single day in the lead up in the last week to this convention, there has been some new security issue that has been raised as a result of some tragedy, whether it be terror attack overseas or whether it be shooting incidents in the United States. The police have been working with the Secret Service for over a year and a half, working on the security plan here. They made adjustments in the last few days. They say that, they openly admit that, even going down to putting snow plows now in public places to act as barriers against anyone who might be crazed enough to use a vehicle to try to break through. The latest concern now is, of course, that those who are trying to secure the convention are themselves now being targeted. And you heard the police union chief who was asking not only for that there be a lifting of this open carry rule here in the state of Ohio, but also he's asking that their officers be teamed up. That's not a problem here. The officers here are working not in just pairs, they're working in groups. And everywhere they go, they're usually backed up by federal authorities as well as military personnel that have their back as well.
Donald Trump in the city poised to make him the Republican Party's presidential standard bearer.
Stop the police murders that are going on. Stop the attacks on immigrants and migrant people in this country. Stop Islamophobia. That's the message that we need to send out.
Against Trump's wall on the Mexican border.
We will march with our sisters and brothers in Mexico.
And against police shootings.
I'm against black men being killed.
Stand up, fight back.
They came in pink, in black masks, and in high spirits. Some came from a few blocks away.
I'm here today to stand in solidarity with our black brothers and sisters who are being systematically oppressed and gunned down in the streets while the city welcomes in a party that frankly has come to stand for violence and racism and xenophobia.
Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of Cleveland, many demonstrating against police alongside police escorts.
On this last day of demonstrations before the start of the Republican National Conventions, this is an eclectic protest. But whether they're here to speak out against the treatment of immigrants, blacks, or Native Americans, this Shut Down Trump rally is united in its opposition to the Republican presidential nominee and to the party's policies.
Police on bikes, in cars, and on foot steered them, trailed them, and on a day when 3 officers were killed in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, left them to speak their minds.
All these racist ass cops, we don't need them.
In a move that left some officers concerned, Cleveland banned axes, gas masks, canned goods, even tennis balls outside the convention. But in this open carry state, not guns. And with armed demonstrators expected in the coming days, including groups supporting Trump, police braced for a tense week ahead. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Cleveland.
Donald Trump loves to talk to the press. But let's not forget, let us not forget, the first time Donald Trump was quoted in the New York Times was in 1973, when the Justice Department went after his company for refusing to rent apartments to African Americans. It was one of the largest federal cases of its kind at the time. And when federal investigators spoke with Trump's employees, they said they were instructed to mark rental applications from black people with a C for colored. By now, we've heard a lot of troubling things about Donald Trump, but that one's shocking.